Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. This is the first in our summer series for campus leaders, and today we will be talking about leading your staff through culture building. We know a lot of you guys have done culture work with us in the past, and you're welcome to do more with us in the future. So we wanted you today to talk and review some of those ideas. Today, Terry Clement and I will be switching off throughout the next few minutes, sharing some of this culture content with you guys. We both have extensive experience in middle schools and elementaries, both in suburban and in urban schools. So we are excited to share some of our experience with you guys. So just a quick check on the norms today. For active participation, we are going to ask that you take a few times. We're going to take a short break to write down some notes, a mindful moment. We do ask that you keep your audio on mute if at all possible to reduce noise. Keep your video on if possible as well. Look through the session today with a growth learner mindset and make sure that we're always thinking about our students as we go through this work. So those are the norms we're going to be following today. So here's what we know. I'm going to give you just a silent moment to read the words on the slide. So considering where we've been and where we're going, it has never been more imperative for us to do the work of building a positive school culture. People need to feel safe, they need to feel encouraged, they need to feel like they belong, that they're supported and they belong, because that's how we're going to get them back in our building. So more important than ever. What is school culture? School culture is every behavior, both intentional and unintentional, that you allow on your campus. So it's not just the things that you are planning for, but it's also the things that happen unintentionally. So we have to consider that when we're considering leading school culture. And now we know that school culture work is more urgent than ever, because if you don't transform as individuals according to the mission and vision of your school, you are going to lose kids, especially this year. And what we want to ask ourselves as school leaders is, are we willing to lose kids because of adult behavior? Are we willing to let that be our barrier? We know that you're not willing to let that happen because you're here with us this afternoon and you're dedicated school leaders who are doing whatever it takes for the kids in your school. So what do we need to do? We need to take bold action. We need to make sure that we understand the actions to take. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be looking at the following agenda for our time together this afternoon. Just a quick review of the content of culture, a quick review of what rituals and artifacts are and what those might be on your campus. Then looking at how do we take bold action by using communication as a tool. And then lastly, thinking about some new rituals that we would consider planning for 2020, 2021, especially in the face of the new environment that we'll have on our campus next year. So just wanting to remind you guys that when we look at lever 3 of the Effective Schools Framework, and that's positive school culture, one of the sub-bullets under positive school culture is ensuring that staff members have a common understanding of your mission, vision, values. So it's not enough for them to just be able to recite it or tell you what it is, but they really have to understand the meaning behind it. And they have to be able to explain how it is in practice and how it's present in the daily life of your school. And that's really what we're going to be talking about, is how you use communication to make sure that understanding and that practice is there every day. So now I'm going to turn it over to Terry to talk to you about the content of school culture.
All right, thanks, Amy. I want to review the content of your school culture. This visual provides a great way to show not just the content of school culture, but how it's related. Absolutely, the foundation of your culture are the shared beliefs on your campus, which inform the mission and vision, from which we derive the values and the commitments, which results in those rituals and artifacts. So just to take you through a quick example and review, imagine that I'm going to just take you through an example. So let's say there's a school that has these beliefs. They believe if they support every student, they'll grow and learn. Also, they definitely believe in continuous improvement for themselves and for their students. That would align with their mission and vision statement. Their vision is to support each other, to pursue healthy, successful lives. And also there's language in the mission statement that aligns. They're referring to themselves as a community of learners, which speaks to that continuous improvement. This same school would then go on to have aligned values and commitment statements, such as accountability and how they'll hold each other accountable for aligning their practice with those shared beliefs, the vision and mission, just like Amy noted, for a positive school culture. The rituals that you would see in such a school would be meetings started with aligned mission, vision, values, and commitment statements that are specific for that meeting. Explicit learning activities about the values and commitments so they can continue to keep that stuff alive. As well as you may observe a data talk with an instructional coach and a teacher, beginning with a review of some of that content. What are the artifacts, the things that you would see in a school like that? You would see a school with mission, vision, and values and commitments on slides, on posters everywhere, visual and social media, on websites, planning documents used at that campus would also note that alignment and the forms used by teachers. And we'll go deeper with some examples on that in just a moment. So that's the content of the culture. What we'll go on now and talk about is a little deeper dive. Today, we wanted to talk more about those rituals. What are rituals? They are absolutely the way that the culture is demonstrated. And if I am a member of this learning community and I demonstrate values and commitments that we share, that would include those opening and closing meeting rituals. It would include how we recognize staff members, absolutely aligned with commitments. It would also might include sentence stems where we practice talking to each other, reiterating those commitments. Also, you may see alignment in lesson planning documents or other documents used to structure our work. All through there, you could see the alignment. As well, let's take a deep dive into artifacts. What are artifacts? These are the things that you can see, visible evidence of the commitments of a campus related to their culture. And this may actually be the awards that people get. It could be the forms that they use, as I mentioned before, where the commitments are clearly noted on there. And we will continue to go deeper into some examples here, but I just want to make sure we understand that the rituals and artifacts are what make that lever 3 note that Amy gave you come alive. This is what a positive school culture looks and feels like. I want to go a little further in just a moment, but before we do that, we've given you some information. Please take about 30 seconds for yourself and focus. Think about if you could list 3 current rituals and artifacts of your campus culture, and just take a moment to write those down. We're going to give you just a moment before we go on to the next piece.
Terry, can you go back to the previous slide?
All right, thank you so much for giving each other that time to think and take a note. Now, when we think about rituals and artifacts, let's go on as campus leaders. We want to look at communication through those rituals and artifacts as a tool for building culture. I'm going to ask Amy to talk to you about some of those communication tools now. Amy?
Yeah, so the first communication tool we'll be looking at is broadcasting, and then Terry will talk to you about alignment of language. So when we talk about communication, we're thinking about both written and spoken communication. So what is broadcasting in both forms? Broadcasting is, throwing out there in all directions. So just really making your message heard in every way, shape, and form. So making sure that it's pervasive across your campus as much as possible. So think about how television stations are broadcasted across our nation, right? They're there whether you're watching them or not. They're pervasive and they're always present. So we want to make sure the first step in our culture tool, our communication tools, is broadcasting our culture. So how do we broadcast our culture through written communication? And so again, thinking about making it pervasive, making it visible all across your campus. That could be having posters in common areas, posters in classrooms, posting it to your website, and occasionally posting it or sharing it out through social media. So making sure that it's constantly present for people in their environment. Broadcasting written communication also means making it part of the email signatures for the leaders and possibly for all the staff on your campus, just making sure it's present whenever anyone gets communication from you. Also, having the culture of your content, your commitments, your mission, vision, posted on agendas so that it's always present. And of course, having it there in staff and student handbooks as well. These are just some examples. There's lots of examples about how you can broadcast written communication, but here are just a few. And then thinking about broadcasting spoken communications. So what are some examples of how you can do that? Terry talked to you about rituals. So one way to broadcast your spoken communication make it part of just the everyday environment of your spoken communication is to have opening rituals for all of those meetings, professional learnings, work sessions, whatever is happening where people gather on your campus, having an opening ritual that includes the culture content for your campus, your collective commitments, your mission vision. You also would consider sharing these pieces during any meetings or events that you have for your students, your community, or your families. It's important that they're part of hearing that broadcast message as well. So again, these were just a few examples of how you can broadcast as a communication tool to build culture on your campus. Now I'm going to have Terry talk to you about alignment of language.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. So first, what is alignment of language? It's absolutely making clear connections between the commitments that we make as a community and our words, behaviors, and actions. So as we go about talking with each other, whether it's formally in meetings or just conversations, really aligning our language choices with that commitment. So I have some examples here that Amy just gave you, and they show up, in those rituals as well. But those written communications, when you fashion them, when you go to draft them, whether it's documents that you use in your work or things that you're sending out as communication, either way, aligning and integrating that language of commitments is crucial to keeping that language alive. And that's what we mean by alignment of language. Remember that the more clear you can make it, the more evident your culture will be. And that's what today is about, really bringing your culture visible so that you can lead it and strengthen it going forward. As well, let's share with you some spoken communications examples of how to align that language. So as we've mentioned already a few times, embedding those rituals with that language, looking to the language when you're planning what you're going to say in meetings, presentations, professional learning. Also remember that the why of the choices that you make as a campus leader should tie back to those. So if you ask yourself, why are we having this particular professional learning? Why are we having this meeting, this conversation? The answer is very often found and should be found and aligned with your campus culture. So we've shared these with you. I do want to just take a moment to, again, give you a moment to pause and think. We just went over rituals and artifacts as the way that your culture becomes visible and evident. So if you had to explain that to someone, how would you explain it about how you use communication through rituals and artifacts as a tool for building culture? How would you explain that to a colleague? So just give yourself a few seconds to take a quick note before we move on to our next piece. Thank you so much for giving each other that time to think about that and reflect on the information we just shared with you. Before we move forward, I do want to just point out, we wanted to share this information with you today, but realizing how things are changing in our world, Amy and I wanted to share a few ideas with you, and I'm going to ask Amy to share those with you about rituals that could really help us planning for the 2021 school year.
Thank you. So, we've talked about the challenges that we might be facing as we think about starting our school year in August, whether we'll be in a building or we'll be starting virtually. There's still a lot of decisions to be made. But no matter what, we know that school is going to happen in August. And it's going to be more important than ever before that you focus on how to build the culture on your campus. And so when we think about new things that you might be doing for next year, we think about it in two different ways. So promoting your culture and being more intentional about those planned human connections. So promotion of culture. Terry mentioned this as an example of an artifact earlier. You might do recognition, spotlighting teachers or leaders who are demonstrating commitment. So you make sure that the rituals you have for recognizing or celebrating staff members are actually tied to those commitments. Another idea is to have a traveling peer award that is based on values that peers nominate and pass to each other. So the picture there is an example from Simon Middle School of their award that was passed around for staff that were demonstrating responsible. So you want to make sure that celebrations and recognitions are frequent and they're happening, as often as possible, but that they're also meaningful and coming from multiple directions. So leaders recognizing staff recognizing each other. It might even be possible for having students to recognize staff. And again, these things can happen virtually or in person. So just, if we have a disrupted school year next year, and you have some time where you're not all together physically at a faculty meeting, you can still complete these rituals of recognition that promote your culture. The other way that we talk or we think about new routines or rituals that you might plan for the next school year is really being purposeful about the human connections. So we have, in the past, as school professionals, we have relied a lot on just physical proximity, passing people in the hallway, having different events around the campus. And a lot of that was unintentional. It just happened, and it was great. But we want to make sure we're really thinking about making that more intentional as we go forward, knowing we're living in a world where we might be remote, or even if we're in person, we might be socially distant. So a lot of those things might not be happening as often as they have in the past. And it's really important to think about, these purposeful human interactions, because in order for the culture content to flow all across your campus, people have to be connecting with each other. So you really need that authentic and purposeful flow across the campus. So you want to think about setting up different rituals to allow people to connect with each other. And one way to think about it is to make sure those rituals are built around your guiding coalition. So making sure whatever groups are happening, you have guiding coalition or leadership team members in every group to help make sure that culture content is evident. Another thing to think about is, really building in socialization and having time for staff to interact that isn't always focused on the work, but having just some time for them to mix and discuss things. It's important too to think about, if we look at the picture, about how people are interacting. Thinking about that authentic purposeful flow of cultural content, we need to think about the different groups that exist on our campus. So we have some really intentional groupings that are present on almost every campus, grade level teams, subject departments, leadership teams, other committees. So we know those people are going to be interacting with each other on a pretty regular basis. But to really build that authentic flow across the campus, you want to be purposeful about making sure people have connections to others they wouldn't be grouped with otherwise. So for example, does the 6th grade math teacher on your campus have an opportunity to get to know the art teacher, even though they might not be in a grade level meeting or department meeting together? So, thinking about the different opportunities on your campus, like PD meetings, whether that's in person or virtual, and being purposeful about how you group people to make sure that people have a chance to talk to people they normally aren't grouped with. So some ideas or some examples of ways to do that. One thing that we do on our team here at E3 is we have built a very short check-in time to every meeting agenda, so that we have a chance to just share personal concerns or celebrations and to check on each other in this time when we're socially distant from each other. Another idea that we thought about when you're thinking about those mixed groups and how to get people to interact with each other they aren't normally grouped with by department or grade level is thinking about having wellness cohorts. So this might be groups of teachers, 4 to 5 teachers that have regular check-ins with each other that are not related to content, but yet still are building that purposeful connection and allowing the culture to flow across your campus. When we think about, building in that socialization time that's not directed to content all the time, another fun thing that you might consider doing is a weekly wellness wave. And so whether this is in person or virtual, it might be just, a 15-minute period where the whole staff gets together and does some sort of fun activity, whether it's, a movement game or sharing, facts about each other. There's so many great icebreaker type activities out there that you could be doing that allow staff to get to know each other and group up in different ways. We know it's really important during this time when you might not be able to visit each other in each other's classrooms. You might not pass each other in hallways, to have some purposeful connection, again, even if that happens, virtually instead of in person. A fun idea for the weekly wellness wave is you could task those wellness cohorts with sponsoring the weekly wellness wave, different cohorts each week where they plan the activity that the staff will participate in. And the last one here, in April and May, we saw lots of really great virtual celebrations. I'm sure you saw them too, happening both in schools we work with, but of course all over social media, Facebook and Twitter. Really cool things that schools did for teachers and that teachers did for students. And so when we think about those planned and intentional human connections, even if we are back in the building next year, you can still continue those virtual celebrations, because sometimes having a virtual celebration allowed the flexibility for people to participate when normally they might not be able to stay late after school or go to different events that you had planned for other staff. So some fun examples that we've seen, of course, singing happy birthday to each other virtually, having a virtual happy hour, thank you videos from students that were shared at staff meetings. Saw some great use of the whiteboard or annotation feature in Zoom to celebrate different staff members or to have, celebrations of teams or departments. So lots of great ideas. And I would recommend just scrolling through social media because there's so many great examples out there. So now that we've talked about some new rituals that you might consider planning for 2020, 2021, I'm going to turn it back over to Terry.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. We just wanted to review. This is the learning that we've had together today. We talked about the content of culture. I walked you through an example about how culture content is aligned and how it culminates in authentic rituals and artifacts that make your culture visible, tangible, where people see your culture and feel it and when they visit or when they're a part of it. Also, we went in depth about communication as a tool for building culture, both through broadcasting and alignment of language. And then Amy shared those exciting ideas. That was neat to hear about some new rituals and things that can go on to really build and strengthen and fortify your culture in the 2020-21 school year. We really value that learning, and I want to just take you back to how we started and know that we need to take action, bold action, because our students deserve it, and because I know that we're all so committed to this work. So it's been fantastic. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And in fact, we want to make sure you know that you're invited. We'd love to see you at our next learning opportunities. Amy, those are... here we go. The next one is next week, June 16th at 2 o'clock. And also, oh, I'm sorry, that was our Road to Recovery webinar, apologize. So June 16th, we're super excited about that. Road to Recovery is a recovery playbook that we're gonna share ideas about how to lead into next year. And then the series that we started with today is gonna continue next week. The dates are the 18th and the 25th, both of those at 1 o'clock. And those will focus on effective professional development, planning and leading those, and also engaging and engaging an inclusive student culture. Sorry about that. So we'd love for you guys to join us for that, and also share that link with other people. So super excited. I believe we're going to add, in just a moment, we'll add a link to the chat with the slides from today. And we appreciate you guys coming.
So we are, once you have the link to the chat, we are going to let you guys break out into team groups